Hello, Haystack Rock Awareness Program interpreters. This is Samantha Ferber again, here to introduce you to the Aquaria Investigation Station. The purpose of this station is to closely observe intertidal animals and algae, to identify anatomical and behavioral differences and similarities, which give rise to their classifications. Both K through 2nd grade and 3rd through 5th grade will focus on making comparative observations about the different animals in the tanks. In addition, 3rd through 5th graders will also compare the animals' prey, predators, and habitat. Start the station by introducing the organisms on display. You may want to include a cool fact or two about each of the organisms. Then, have the group choose their 2 favorite animals from the tanks. Ask them how they are the same and how they are different. You may need to assist the students in making these comparisons about the animals. You can ask them questions like, do they move? Do they have a hard body or a soft body? Do they have eyes? For the 3rd through 5th graders, after you have compared one pair of animals, you can also ask the students to make a hypothesis about where the animals live, what they eat, and what eats them by thinking about what the animal looks like and what they are doing in the tanks. After they have tried to guess, you can give the students the answers, but it is best for them to learn how to use observations to make predictions. To cover all the bases in your comparisons, think about what is needed to survive in the intertidal. Every animal needs to stay wet, hold on, breathe, feed, and sense their surroundings. You may also want to compare how they protect themselves. Let's do a brainstorming activity. Compare the 2 organisms below. Think about how they stay wet, how they breathe, how they hold on, how they feed, how they protect themselves, and how they sense their surrounding. Feel free to pause the video at this time if you need more time to complete this task. We will only be required to compare at least one set of animals. If you are able to compare more, please do. But please also make sure you leave enough time to restate and reiterate the similarities and differences you have discussed before moving on to the other animals or before rotating. 6th through 8th grade will discuss how animals interact and in what other ways they are connected. Again, start this station by introducing the organisms in the tank. Proceed this by discussing how they think these animals interact or how they are connected. Animals can be connected in various ways. They can share a common food resource. They could share habitat. Then brainstorm how humans could potentially impact these connections. Remember, this discussion should be student-led. If the students do not have an answer or are just really not saying anything, stimulate their thinking by asking questions. For example, if you had a barnacle and an anemone in the tanks, you could say, specifically, how do you think the barnacle and the anemone are connected? Do they share similar resources? Always remind students that guessing is okay. It's part of the scientific process. We can learn a lot from even wrong guesses. Let's do another brainstorming activity. In the tanks, you have the following organisms. Brainstorm how these animals and algae are connected and how they interact. Remember, all these animals are connected solely because they live in the intertidal ecosystem. Feel free to pause the video if more time is needed. Let's move on to our final grade group. Again, introduce the organisms in the tanks first. Then, ask the students if they know what a phylum is. Proceed to discuss what animals in the tanks belong to the same phylum. Again, remind them that guessing is part of the scientific process. It is okay to be wrong. Have them guess which are the same group by looking at similarities if they do not know which of the animals belong in the same phylum. When they have a correct match, tell them the phylum name and the key characteristics of that phylum. So what is a phylum? A phylum is a group of organisms that share similarities or similar characteristics. As you can see in the illustration below, there are a hierarchy of classifications, kingdom being the most general, and species being the most specific. A way to remember this hierarchy is keeping precious creatures organized for grumpy scientists. On your station clipboard, you will have important intertidal phyla sheets. These sheets are full of different information that classify each phylum. Today, we will discuss basic similarities that each of these phylum have. Our first phyla is Porifera, or sponges. These are the simplest animals on Earth. They have no symmetry, they have no tissue layers, and they lack organs. They are filter feeders. They bring in water through pores in their body and filter out plant plankton or phytoplankton out of the water. You can see these pores in the picture to the right. Their bodies are made up of spongin, a fibrous protein, and spicules give them protection and structure. Spicules are needle-like structures made up of silica or calcium. It is interesting to think about nudibranchs, an animal that belongs to a different phylum that we will later discuss. But nudibranchs can eat sponge. They can actually ingest spicules and not be harmed by them. Other nudibranchs can ingest nematocysts, which are stinging cells. So it's interesting to think about how hardy a nudibranch's digestive system actually is. Speaking of nematocysts, the next phylum we will discuss is Cnidaria. This phylum includes hydrozoans, jellyfish, anemones, and corals. This phylum has radial symmetry, meaning their body parts are arranged in a circular fashion. Cnidarians have two basic body shapes: a medusa, think of a jellyfish, or a polyp, think of an anemone. They all have one opening to a simple digestive tract. that is surrounded by tentacles. These tentacles have stinging cells called pneumatocysts, which capture their food, zooplankton, and other animals. Although they do not appear to be very active, they are actually carnivores that are constantly searching for prey. Echinodermata: sea stars, urchins, sea cucumbers, and sand dollars. This group also has radial symmetry. Most of the time, however, it's in multiples of 5. Think about an ochre star, like the ones on the right. They have 5 arms. Or the sand dollar. They have 5 teeth. Echinoderms mean spiny skin. All these animals have tough leathery skin that covers a skeleton of interlocking calcium carbonate plates. You can actually see this skeleton protruding through the skin of an ochre sea star. You can see the white dots in the picture to the right. That is its skeleton. All echinoderms also have 2 feet, which are operated by a water vascular system. In the picture to the right, the dot that is orange on the top purple sea star is called the madreporite. That is where they suck in water into their bodies. If a sea star or urchin want to extend to 2 feet, they have to pump water into it. If they want to retract it, they suck the water out. For this reason, echinoderms need water to move. That is why sea stars will cling to the rocks during low tide. Phylum Mollusca. Chitin, snails, mussels, nudibranchs, octopods, and squid belong to this phylum. They are bilaterally symmetrical. Think of a human. We are also bilaterally symmetrical. Our bodies are arranged in a mirror image. Mollusks have a head-foot arrangement. All mollusks also have a mantle which secures its organs. They have varying feeding mechanisms. Mussels are filter feeders, but chitin, snails, and nudibranchs all use a radula, which is rows of teeth, to feed. Our next group is actually the largest phylum on Earth. Arthropods are crabs, shrimps, insects, barnacles, and isopods. They too have bilateral symmetry, and they have segmented bodies. All arthropods have an exoskeleton with jointed appendages. Because their soft tissue is growing underneath of their hard, rigid exoskeleton, they have to molt the exoskeleton to continue to grow. The hermit crab, in the picture to the right, actually has a softer exoskeleton. Therefore, they need a snail shell to give them some extra protection. These last 3 phyla are the macroalgae phyla. Chlorophyta is green algae. Acrophyta is brown. Rhodophyta is red. All these organisms are primary producers. They use sunlight and carbon dioxide to make food. I would like to remind you that algae are not the same as plants. They lack roots and vascular tissues. Instead, they take up nutrients from the water directly through the surface of their fronds. And they attach to rocks or other substrate with a holdfast, again, not with roots. These three phylum are different. Their classifications arise from the fact that they all use a different variety of sunlight capturing pigments. Chlorophyta, interestingly enough, is more related to a land plant than they are to red algae. But this still does not make them a plant. They are in fact an algae. Algae are also important to humans. In addition to taking carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and releasing oxygen, they also produce important chemicals we use to make products, such as toothpaste and dairy products. These chemicals help those products be more solid. We actually consume algae on a daily basis without even knowing. If you have any questions about the materials presented in this lecture, please feel free to give me a call at 503-436-8060 or send me an email at atrap@ci.cannon-beach.or.us. Thank you.